So this is the Matrix 4 Questions video. And again, we would be inviting our learner. Is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions? Everybody has said yes, and here's how we begin. You can have the matrix behind you the way it is here. And I'm going to be asking the first question, which is, who is important to you? And the typical responses that I'm going to get from people, and that this is young or old, is they're going to say mom, they're going to tell me mom or their dad, or their family is important to them. And every time they give something to me, I'm going to say, thank you, great, I'm going to put that down on the board. And we're building our list of who's important to us. And it can go on. I also will hear things like friends are important. So we're going to write friends. And there's your school bell showing up right on cue. And we could even get into the family pet might be someone who is important to people. And we're going to put him or her up on the board as well. Now at the same time, I might also ask them, what's important to you? Which is a little bit of a different question. And the typical responses that I might get might be, for a young person, they like to have fun, right? So we're going to put fun up here, right? And if we're in the context of school, they might say that learning is important to them. So great, we're going to put learning up here on the board, right? If they're an older student, they might say that something like graduation is important to them, right? Or people young and old might tell me that their career is important to them. And other responses might be health, might be something that's important. So we're just going to get a list of who and what's important. And then I even ask them, when you're hanging out with your important people or doing your important stuff, how does that typically feel to you? And the general response is going to be some version of it feels good, or it feels satisfying, something like that. Satisfaction. All right. So then we're going to slide over here to the left side of the board, and now I'm going to say, but then sometimes you might notice that stuff shows up on the inside of you that might get in the way of you moving toward who and what's important to you. So what kind of stuff might be showing up inside of you, or has been showing up inside of you, that's getting in the way of you doing the things that you want to be able to do? So typical responses I'm going to get are, I might hear something like bored. People might tell me that they are bored. And I'm going to say, great, okay, so boredom shows up inside of you. There's our bell again, time to get to class. Boredom shows up inside of you, and they might also tell me that they are tired. I get that a lot. Tired might show up inside of a learner, and that might get in the way. Frustration might show up inside of someone and get in the way. And the idea with this stuff is it's sticky, it's uncomfortable, you don't want to have it. The real biggie, of course, is something like fear, because everybody has experienced fear. So if they're having trouble with this, I might say, well, have you ever had experience of fear show up inside of you? And just about everybody will say, oh yeah, I felt that before. Yeah, me too, right? So that's kind of the way we would maybe do that if somebody's feeling a little kind of hesitant about getting in here. But typically, I don't find that happens. I find that students will generally start telling me about the stuff, and we're just going to put it up here on the board. So bored, tired, frustration, anger might show up. And now the next thing might be sadness might show up. And these are the kind of biggies that I hear, very popular. And now my next question is going to be, once we get a list going, is, when this stuff shows up inside of you, what might I see you do to move away from that? Like you might want to do something with your body. Like if the fear shows up inside of somebody, and like you're crossing a street and you don't see the car coming, and you see it at the last minute, and what are you going to do? You're going to have this experience of fear, and you're going to get away, right? You're going to do something like move out of the way, jump, right? So now for these things here, like if the boredom shows up inside of you, what might I see you do, or what might someone see you do out there to move away from that feeling of being bored? Well, the very, very popular, ever popular one that I hear is put my head down. So put my head down would go up here, because that's something I would see you do. That's a behavior. We're up here with the senses. So they might put their head down to move away from bored. tired, well, we're going to go one step further. Maybe people might sleep. I've actually experienced people sleeping in class. I don't know if you have, but I certainly have seen that once or twice. Frustration might show up inside of someone, and to move away from feelings of frustration, well, guess what? You could leave, right? Just get up and go to get away from that feeling of frustration. Likewise for anger, it shows a very popular thing, and the very popular thing to do for anger would be to yell, to move away from that uncomfortable feeling of anger. And for sadness, we probably would be, maybe they might be telling me that they would cry to move away from that sad feeling showing up inside of them. And my last question to them is going to be, well, what do you want to be able to do to continue to move toward who and what's important to you? So like, for example, your mom, what might you do? And for mom, well, we might want to come up here and we might want to go and talk to mom, right? So we might do something very simple with dad. Okay, what are we going to do with dad? Well, for dad, maybe we might play a game, play something with dad. For my friends, I might then do something like hang out with my friends. For my pet, well, it's my dog. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. So go for a walk. And let's not lose sight of the fact that if you're doing this in a school setting, one of the things I like to do is I would say to them something like this. Hey, guess what? You've already done something really important. And you know what that is? And they might not know. And I'm going to say, well, you showed up, you're here, right? So showing up to move toward your learning is a really important thing to do. So show up, right? Showing up will really help you to move toward learning, won't it? For fun, again, ever popular, play video games to move toward fun. And by the way, that shows up down here as far as video games. And the one I left out, which is probably the numero uno in terms of what's important to young people, would be their phone, ever popular phone. And we could do the same thing for these other things over here. So for graduation, you would go to class, for example. For your career, somebody might study to move toward that career. For health, okay, the basic thing for health would be to get some exercise. So then at the end, we could step back with our learner and we can say something like, so hey, thank you very much for helping me set up the matrix. I think it's kind of interesting, don't you? And I'm kind of wondering, like, who's the one who's noticing all of this right now? And then they're going to pause for a minute. And if they don't get it, I'm going to say, well, you are. But usually they'll say, well, I am. Or they might say, you are the person doing it. But typically we're going to get around to this me. That me right there, that your original me is sitting here right now noticing all of this stuff. And here's that me in the middle who's doing the noticing. And you're noticing about who's important to you. You're noticing about what's important to you. We're sitting here noticing the yucky stuff that shows up that gets in the way. We're sitting here also noticing things that you might do or have done to move away from that stuff, and things that you might be able to do to keep moving toward who and what is important to you. So we can use this to kind of figure things out, and it works really well to help you and help other people get where they want to go. So there is the basic video about how to ask the 4 questions, and I'll see you at the next one.